But we do have a brilliant speaker today. We have Carey with us, backed by popular demand. You may not know that he was co-host of a radio program for several years on computers, and he's also an author of a book. And he's certainly brilliant, and he's able to answer any questions that you guys may have. And be sure to be thinking of questions. He loves questions. Carey?
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, this is early for me, so I have to, this is my coffee. Hi. Hi. Everybody's kind of this way. I guess I'll be leaning this direction. I don't know if we'll be using the screens much today or not. Just it kind of depends on what direction we take with the presentation. For those of you who are new here, or not new here, but are new to me, my name is Carey Holzman. I'm a computer technician. I began in 1991 fixing computers professionally, which doesn't seem that long ago, does it? Right? 2001, 2011, 2000. Holy smokes. Wow. Yeah, I've been doing this for 27 years professionally, and in the 80s I just did it for fun because that's how sick and twisted I am. Now, what I like to do is, you know, when I belonged to the computer club in the 90s, what used to happen, you guys might remember, companies used to send representatives out to promote their product. And they typically had a PowerPoint presentation, and they would say, let's dim the lights and hold your questions until the end. And they would tell you how wonderful their product is and then offer the product to you at a discount. And that was the process. Now, before the computer presentations began, they used to do a question and answer session before the speaker came on. I used to go for the Q&A, and then when the speaker came on and the lights went out and hold your questions to the end, that's when I went out the door, sneak out. So my presentations are nothing but Q&A, and I'm not here to sell you anything. I have no agenda. If I promote a product, I don't make any money whether or not you buy it. There's no incentive financially for me to offer any product or service that we're going to talk about today, other than my own repair service. I do computer repairs. Several people here have utilized my services, and if you're looking for referrals, which I highly recommend you get before you hire anybody to do any work, talk to your neighbors or talk to other people in the computer club, and you can find out what they have to say about me, and I hope it's good things. And that's sort of my motivation for being here, is to share my knowledge in a way that's easy to understand, I hope, and at the same time promote my business for computer repair, sales, and upgrades. I am not an Apple person. I don't know much about Apple at all. Not because Apple is inferior or anything like that. It's just there are more PCs to fix, so there's more potential business on the PC side, and so that's where my business has led me. If the situation was flip-flopped, I'd be all about Apple and I wouldn't know anything about PC. So today what I'd like to do is encourage you to ask any questions that are on your mind at any point. It's fine. And I will do my best to provide an answer to you. I'm pretty good, and then when I've got Google, I'm excellent. So I have Google foo, just knowing those right search terms. Let's talk a minute about those passwords. No, keeping the same password is completely unrelated to viruses, in so much as whether or not you wash your car has anything to do with whether or not you get into a car accident. They are totally unrelated. Sometimes changing your password too often can cause different problems, such as remembering the password or creating a situation where you pick a weaker password than the one you had. So password rules have changed over the years as the technology has improved and people have gotten to be a bit wiser on the internet. And we used to say, for example, you should use a mixture of upper and lowercase characters and a special symbol like the asterisk or the pound sign. Sorry, the hashtag. Not so much anymore. These days, And by the way, most websites, unfortunately, most American corporate websites have not adopted these new rules. American corporations are often so big and fat and slow, they won't do this for years, but doesn't mean you can't start. So the best password you can have is at least 12 characters long, and you can make a sentence without spaces. That's a very good password. My dog is Jake, and I can put a capital J in Jake. I'm a little short there. That's still not that in and of itself is not a bad password. If I can throw a couple numbers in there as well, certainly no harm. If you have a password of nothing but numbers, that's the easiest password to crack, no matter how many numbers. Because the software will just go through, let's say you've got a password that's like a PIN number on an ATM machine. On a computer, you could cycle through 0000, 0001, 0002, 0003. You'll crack it. With as fast as computers are today, that might have been okay years ago, but with as fast as computers are today, they'll cycle through every permutation of combination of numbers very, very quickly. So the idea that we're trying to do here is make a password that isn't just going to be a word in a dictionary. So if your password was incorrect, that would instantly be broken, instantly, within milliseconds, because it can do a brute force dictionary attack, very easily go through every word in the dictionary. Incorrect is in the dictionary. So I realize that's a joke, but just to bring it down to reality for a minute, how unwise that would be. You know, if you've got a password that's working for you now, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. Keep using what you're using. Someone asked me about Wi-Fi changing in this park. One of the questions I get every year, I've been coming here since 2004, I think, 2004. Every year, how do I get my Wi-Fi to work? Every year. Many of you guys live in metal boxes. That does not work well with Wi-Fi. There's also, during the season, when all you guys come in, too many people that when you do get connected, it's really, really slow because you're basically on the freeway at rush hour. Furthermore, it's not your Wi-Fi. It might be included, but it's not yours. So to do any financial transactions on a Wi-Fi that's not yours is unwise. At least not without a virtual private network or VPN. And then that's where things get a little complicated. You want things to be less complicated? Bring your own Wi-Fi. Now today that's easier than ever. Most smartphones, most modern smartphones, have the ability to be a hotspot. That's the way I've got my laptop configured right now. I'm not using the internet from here. This is my phone wirelessly tethered to my laptop. And it's just like having one of those little air cards, or they have other names that you can get from the cell phone company. And you know, these aren't phones, by the way. This is a computer that makes phone calls. These computers, you know, they come out with a new one every year. And when it's time to upgrade, consider getting one. Listen, I'm one of the last holdouts of this flip phone. I just got this a few months ago. This is my first smartphone. I've been using a flip phone since they became affordable until October. I got this in October. And I could not tether I had no data plan with the smartphone. I couldn't do it. So there's other benefits to having these. There's some inconveniences to having them too. But if you're in an area like this, you've got two bad things here in this area. One is that Wi-Fi it's just, even when it's working, it's not very good. And two, it seems like, depending on where you are in this park, the cellular service here is not very good. I'm getting 2-3 bars on my phone. You know, I go to 43rd Avenue in Peoria, and I'm spiked at 5 bars and a very strong signal. And the stronger the signal is, the faster the data is. The faster it can send and transmit and receive. So if you want to do financial things over the internet, you should use your own internet connection. And the best internet connection you can get in this park is Cox Cable. I don't work for Cox Cable. I'm not selling Cox Cable. That's just fact. People that have Cox cable here in the park are going to be faster than everybody else. They're faster than my phone, they're faster than that Wi-Fi, and it's consistent. In other words, they won't say, well, am I going to get on today? And if I do get on, is it going to take forever for my email to load? It'll always be consistent. So it is a typical story of you get what you pay for. Now, you can use the free Wi-Fi here. I'm going to use the word free loosely. To do financial transactions. You can. And you may never have a problem. I'm just telling you, you have no control over it. So how much do you want to trust something that has to do with financial information to something you have no control over? All I can do is give you the information, and then you guys, we're adults here, we make our own decisions. So when it comes to passwords, I use a program, I've talked about this before, I use a program called RoboForm. And RoboForm will remember my passwords for me. And that way I can use all different kinds of passwords for all different kinds of sites. And I just have to remember one password. That's my RoboForm password. In RoboForm, I can say I want to go to eBay, and RoboForm will take me to eBay, log me into eBay with my username and my password, and hit enter, all with one click. And I've got 150 passwords in RoboForm. So you better make sure that your one password that gets you in and out of RoboForm is a really good one. Because if somebody gets that one password to your RoboForm, then they get all your passwords, right? It's the key to unlock the safe. So the benefit of RoboForm is you only have to remember one password, and RoboForm will remember all of your passwords to all of your sites. But if somebody gets that password, then they have access to that. So the key is to making a strong password. Now, the thing about security that sucks is it more often than not keeps out the person who created it, who needs it, instead of the bad guys. Any of us locked keys in the car in your life? It did its job, kept people out of your car. Same with passwords. Passwords are digital keys. We don't have physical keys to plug in to locks with a computer. All a password is a key on your keychain. That's all it is. And you want a key that's only your key. You don't want the same key I have or somebody else has. Just like when you buy a car. You better hope that those cars all use different keys. You don't want somebody else driving off with your car. So if you're the kind of person that leaves your keys in the ignition and the door's unlocked all the time, I might be wasting my breath talking about passwords. I know we discussed this, I think the last time I was here. The most common passwords used, the most common passwords used in 2017. So I've talked about this and talked about this. There's articles, the newspaper, the TV. We've talked about it for years and years and years. And yet this still happens. Still, when it comes to what is the most common password people use, look on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. QWERTY. Just going right across the keyboard. If you don't take your security seriously, I have no sympathy for what happens to your identity or your financial bank information. I don't care. I said, you know what? You were given the knowledge. You chose to not take it seriously. Now you're calling me for help. I'll help you, but I'm not giving you any sympathy. I'm not going to say, oh, poor you. You need to know better by this point. And I lose my sense of humor when it comes to this stuff, because when people think it's not going to happen to them, and then it happens to them, and then they want to cry about it, it's very stressful on me, because I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else. I've kind of reached a level of frustration where trying to get people to believe it is going to happen to them and to take this seriously so you don't have to call me. And if people, it's going to sound a bit cocky, but if people listen to what I said, I'd be out of business. Does anybody have any questions that we can start with? Yes.
How much does a VPN protect your privacy?
How much does a VPN protect your privacy? 100%.
So
It doesn't.
having one down here if you were using their Wi-Fi to have a VPN?
If you have a VPN, you can use any public Wi-Fi or internet, even when you pay for Wi-Fi or internet at a hotel, it's no different. It's insecure because you have no control over it. You may not even know, like let's say you go to Starbucks, and Starbucks has free Wi-Fi. When you connect to that free Wi-Fi, you don't know if you're actually connecting to the real Starbucks Wi-Fi or if somebody in the restaurant or in the parking lot is broadcasting what appears to be Starbucks Wi-Fi. And then you're voluntarily typing in your names and passwords to your sites. Now that's fine if you're just, reading the news or, general web surfing. When it comes to something like email, paying bills, booking airline tickets, I would suggest being cautious. And the best way you can be cautious is don't do that stuff at Starbucks. There's a gentleman that wrote an article and he took a picture. A guy was doing taxes for his clients at Starbucks. So he's got his laptop on the table with his coffee, and he gets up to go get a refill, leaving his customer's information completely exposed on the laptop. So when we talk about things like Wi-Fi and the internet, things we can't see, let us not also forget the things we can. Let us not forget the obvious. One of my favorite examples is somebody says to me, I don't shop online because I don't want to give my credit card number online. But instead, they're in a public place. Perhaps they're calling the credit card company. Maybe they're at the store and their card was declined, and the clerk hands them the phone. And the person talks loud enough for everybody around them to hear the entire conversation. You want my card number? Let me say it really loud so everybody around me can. People have become oblivious to the environment that they're in. Now, when it comes to credit cards, I don't really care. It's the bank's money they're stealing, it's not mine. Unless it's a debit card, that's different. You can take Citibank's money, I don't care. I honestly, you want to steal the money from Citibank, Chase, Wells Fargo, knock yourself out. I got nothing to do with it. I just file a claim that wasn't me, and the charge comes off. It doesn't cost me anything. That's why I always use a credit card online. I never, ever use my debit card because that comes out of my checking account. That's my money they're taking, not the bank's money. And it may take a while to get that money back. I don't care how long it takes for Chase to get their money back, or Wells Fargo, whoever it is. So, when we talk about security, part of it is on you, and part of it is on the business you're doing, the retailer you're doing business with. So you do your part, and ideally they do theirs, but they don't always do theirs. Sometimes even when you do everything right, whoops, Target got hacked. Whoops, Home Depot got hacked. Whoops, TJ Maxx got hacked. Whoops, Equifax got hacked. And nothing you can do about it. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. But you can do your part. You can play your role. Yes?
Why did you choose RoboForm?
There's about 3 or 4 password managers that are really popular and used a lot, used more than others. And I'd say the 2 big ones are RoboForm and LastPass. And it's almost like it's a Ford and this one's a Chevy, and you're asking me why did I pick the Ford? It was out first, I guess, and I'm familiar with it. I mentioned I couldn't find usually I park right over here, and the lot was so full here. I parked over here, and then I walked around, and they said, we have doors right here. I'm staring right at them since 2004, and it never occurs to me I can park over there. Never. I'm a creature of habit. I have a successful, I do something that works, and I do it again and again and again and again. I don't think of alternatives. That's just my nature. So I use RoboForm for that reason. It was the first one I used. It continues to perform well. They've never had any security breaches in all these years. It's like $20 a year. It's very reasonable, and it just does a good job. Now LastPass is a newer competitor. They're very similar in a lot of ways. LastPass is a little bit cheaper, and it's really just a personal preference. I suggest you check each one out. They have free versions that are limited in their use, and decide for yourself which one you like.
Carey, I know somebody else has the mic. I have LastPass, and there's been, I know, 2 times when I've gone in and put in my major password that they tell me that they cannot proceed. I need to come back later, which means I can't get any of my passwords.
Oh, that's interesting. Has that happened recently?
I would say since I've been here within the last couple months, month and a half.
Interesting. RoboForm will never do that, because RoboForm stores a copy on your local hard drive. It's not just online.
I thought maybe that had the same problem. There's another question here.
Yes?
You talked about VPN and using your phone as a hotspot. Can
Yeah.
you explain that? I don't think a lot of people understand what you're talking about.
Does anybody here not know what a hotspot is? Okay. So a hotspot, I think a lot of people used to, I don't see it much anymore. A lot of people used to think you go buy a computer and you turn it on, it was like a radio. Does this have Wi-Fi? Because I want to get on the internet. Well, it's not like a radio. You don't just, with a radio, you buy a radio and then you tune it to the station you want to hear. With the internet, you have to bring your own station, or you have to use somebody else's station. And the broadcast of that station doesn't extend as far as radio. It only extends within a few hundred feet or a few thousand feet, generally speaking. And the further away you are from the station, the weaker the signal is. No differently when you're driving and you got that station that's all staticky. The difference between analog and digital, make this real simple. When we made phone calls in the 70s and I'm going to say 70s and 80s because that's when I was growing up, and you had a cordless phone and your signal was getting weak, you heard static on the phone. You'd hear right? When we go to digital, digital is on or it's off. There is no gray area. With analog, you can hear 2 different things at the same time if the waves are crossing over. You've done that, right? You've heard 2 radio stations cross over each other. You've heard radio stations fade in and fade out and be staticky. With digital, it doesn't work that way. It is crisp and clear, or it's not there at all. That's it. There is no static. It may cut off and come back on and cut off and come back on when the signal's weak. But it will never be staticky, it'll never be faded. It is either 100% or 0%. That's it. So when we talk about a hotspot, we're bringing a little digital broadcast station with us. This phone will broadcast probably about 30 feet, and the further away I get from it, the weaker my connection is. And the weaker my connection is, the slower my connection is. The closer I get to the hotspot, the faster my connection gets. But my connection will never get any faster than how far away this is from the tower that it's connecting to. So the example I like to give is, I typically bring a bullhorn. So let's say we have a tower out here, and it can broadcast all the way across the other side of the park. This cannot broadcast all the way across the park. Unlike a radio, your radio is only receiving and playing music. It's not sending anything back. So I use a bullhorn to say, I'm the Wi-Fi tower, can you hear me? And you're at the end of the park going, yes. And I'm like, what? Because you don't have a bullhorn like I do, I can't hear you. Well, if what's receiving the Wi-Fi isn't as powerful to send the Wi-Fi back, your signal's too weak. You've got to have a strong signal in both directions. And that's the best way I can explain it. Just think of a guy in a field with a bullhorn. You can hear him, but he can't hear you back unless you also get a bullhorn. This isn't, I really don't think it's that complicated when you understand the way it works. It's a radio wave. It's a digital wave that has to flow in both directions. Remember, a television and a radio, you're only receiving a signal. But with Wi-Fi, you're sending You're putting in your name, you're putting in your password, you're telling the internet where you want to go, you're directing it. So you have to be able to reach the tower, or you have to be able to reach your hotspot. Your hotspot could sit between you and the tower to get the best signal possible. Now, here's what I find ironic. In the 1970s, we had a console TV with rabbit ear antennas, and we'd just sit there and we adjust it. How's that picture like? Is that picture like? Right there. Don't move. Don't move. 40 years later, we're more advanced and evolved now. Hold on, I got to stand right here. Don't move. I got a signal. Come a long way, right? So that's what a hotspot is. It's bringing your own internet with you, and it's got a very limited broadcast range. A Wi-Fi router will broadcast a few hundred feet. A Wi-Fi air card or smartphone, maybe 30 feet, somewhere around there. And then, of course, if you're in an area where you can't reach the cell, you can connect this all day long, but if this can't connect to internet, you're not going anywhere. And then there's a virtual private network, and all that virtual private network is doing is it's encrypting what you're sending on both sides, encrypting and decrypting. And the best way I would explain that would be during the, there's that Wind Talkers movie about the Navajos that were sending our orders to the troops in Navajo so the Germans couldn't crack it. That would be the equivalent of encryption. The Germans could hear it, but they couldn't make heads or tails of what they were hearing. That's what encryption does. Encryption takes what you're doing, all your data, and it garbles it. So anybody who's eavesdropping can theoretically grab the data, but they don't know what they've got, and they have no way to make, they don't know if it's financial information, if it's a conversation or a video. It's just a jumble of data. And a VPN also hides where you're from. So if I connect to a VPN right now, I can make it appear as though I'm in New York or I'm anywhere in the world, and it completely anonymizes who I am. Now there's a good side to that and there's a bad side to that. Like any tool, there are people that use a car to create an ambulance to help save people, and there are people who use a car to shoot at people and use as a getaway car in a robbery. And that's the world we live in. So VPNs are a way for hackers and bad guys to steal money and steal your identity and do it in a way where they can never be caught. But people that are really concerned about their privacy and their identity use the VPN to give them peace of mind and security, knowing that if the bad guys aren't going to get caught, the bad guys aren't going to be able to catch, steal my identity, at least not from me. They'll steal it from Equifax. They'll steal it from the companies that also have your identity, but they won't steal it from you when you're using a VPN. So you don't have to use a VPN. It's an added layer of security that enables you then to use any Wi-Fi, any public internet, and let them eavesdrop. Who cares? Who cares if that Wi-Fi at Starbucks isn't real? Who cares? Everything you're doing is encrypted from your computer to the computer you're talking to. So if they eavesdrop, all they're going to get they're going to get data that they can't make any sense out of. Other questions? Yes.
When shopping online, which is safer, your credit card or PayPal?
When you're shopping online, I would say using your credit card is better than PayPal because, it depends on the credit card company. PayPal's not the best when it comes to customer service. PayPal will say things like, you're not allowed to buy this or that with your PayPal card. So if you buy a gun, which is completely legal, with a PayPal card and you have a problem with that transaction, PayPal will say, no, you're not allowed to use your PayPal card to buy a gun. We're not helping you with this. In fact, who knows what the conditions, what their consequences may be. You take a company like Discover, in my experience, they're there to help you and follow up with you on any problems you might have using the card. I can't really speak for the other big banks. PayPal, I use PayPal a lot. But I use it because I do a lot of, there's a couple of reasons why I use it. One is I make videos on YouTube, and YouTube pays me through PayPal. So that's where the money comes in. And then PayPal gives me 1% back on purchases, so if I use the PayPal card for things I'm going to purchase anyway, and I'll use it for that. If I buy on Amazon, I'll use my PayPal credit card. PayPal actually makes they call it a debit card, but it's really a credit card. And that's what I use. But I also know that if I have any problems, when I call their customer service, I'm going to be prepared for the worst. When I call Discover's customer service, I'm more relaxed. I feel like they're really going to help me. So that's just from my personal experience. As to whether or not one's safer than the other, not so much one's safer than the other. Any credit card is better than using any debit card in any purchase at all, online or otherwise. Is there a question over here? Yes?
What is a simple backup program that's easy to use and easy to restore?
Sometimes the simplest of questions have the most complex answers. There is not one way to back up. There's several different ways to do it. You can do a full image backup, which means it gets every bit of data off of your computer onto an external hard drive. That means it gets every temp file. If you've got viruses, it copies that. It copies every program. It copies every single thing with impunity. And it takes a long time to make it. But if your computer should have a hard drive crash, all you have to do is replace the hard drive and restore your image, and it's exactly the way it was the day you made the image. So if you made the image 6 months ago, you'll lose everything that you did since you made the image for those last 6 months. But you'll be up and running in 10 minutes. But there's a lot of buts. One of the things that frustrates me about first of all, getting people to make backups, and secondly, getting them to make the right kind of backup. I don't know what the right kind of backup is for you. I don't know how much data you've got. I don't know, is it going to be reasonable to you to start a backup and wait 3 hours for it to finish, and to do that as often as need be, that if you ever need that to restore that backup, that it'll still be useful to you. It's like going to the store and buying a bunch of bananas and letting them sit on the counter for 2 months. Probably don't want those bananas anymore. So if your backup sits too long, it may be perishable. You'll say, well, that's great, I got all my data from 6 months and beyond, but what about everything I just did? You lost it because you didn't back it up. But even if you back it up, even if you put the data, you say, okay, Carey said to get an image and to get an external hard drive, and you wait a few hours, you do that. But then your house gets burglarized, your house catches fire, your house has a flood. They're going to steal your backup because you kept it right there next to the computer. Or it's burned down with the house. Those folks in California, nobody saw that coming. The people in Texas and Houston, the floods, Louisiana, Puerto Rico, 9/11. The news doesn't really talk about the data that people have lost in these events that have taken place. So all I can tell you about backups is the only thing that people who've lost data have in common is they weren't expecting it. So what we're doing with backups is we're creating insurance, and we're planning for the worst and hoping for the best. So you plan for the worst. The worst thing that can happen is my house burns down to the ground. Where's my data? The best place to keep a backup of your data is out in what we call the cloud, which just means someone else's computer out there in the internet. But it's slow, and it doesn't back up your programs, and it doesn't back up your operating system. It only backs up the things you made, your pictures, your documents. And there's a great service that does this automatically for you for about $60 a year. There's two of them. One's called Carbonite, and the other's called Mosey. And like I say, they run about $60 a year, and what they do is they automatically back your data up. There's no limit to how much, it'll just back up everything you've got, and it'll back up anytime that it notices your computer is idle, and it won't interrupt it won't slow down your internet connection while it's in use. So your very first backup, it's going to back up everything for the very first time. It's going to take a while. It's going to take quite a while. And if your computer should happen to get a virus or be stolen or be in a flood during that time, you won't have all your data. So if you're somebody who has a lot of photos, things like that, it could take weeks for that to get up into the cloud. Then once it's up into the cloud, it just monitors changes, additions, deletions, and it changes them as you change them. It happens instantly. So you don't have to worry about doing it. Then your hard drive fails. You go, okay, Carey, my hard drive failed and my data's in Carbonite. What do I do? At that point, I would suggest you hire somebody like me. And what I would do is replace the hard drive, reinstall the operating system, reinstall the drivers, reinstall the updates. You'd have to give me your programs. They'd have to all be reinstalled. Then I'd reinstall Carbonite, and then I could restore your data, which is a heck of a lot better than losing it. You could go old school, and you could copy your data onto an external drive, and then you can take that drive and put it in another location. But that gets to be a pain in the butt if your data is really important and you're making changes to it, because again, if you moved it into that location 6 months ago, and now you need it, you might really regret that you didn't do it last week, because you will have lost 6 months worth of data. So there is no right or wrong way or only way to back up data. All I can tell you is if you have something that's important to you, make copies of it and take those copies and put them in another building. Whether you do that through the internet, or you get in your car, or you use your feet and you walk over to, a safe deposit box in a bank. It all depends on how important it is. And only you can answer that. Data has no value. In other words, no technician, no corporation, when you send a computer in for repair, will guarantee your data. Because if they did and they lost the data, what would be a fair compensation for that? Nobody can say, and therefore, nobody can guarantee it. They just won't accept responsibility. It's your responsibility. And it sucks to be in my position and to have these phone calls. Hi, Carey. My computer says it won't boot. What do you think that is? Well, it sounds like your hard drive died. So what do we do? Well, what I would do is bring your computer into my shop, replace the hard drive, we'll reinstall your operating system, your drivers. If you have any programs, I'll put those back on. And then we'll restore the data from your backup. Oh, I don't have a backup. Oh. Well, you can send the drive in for data recovery services. They might be able to get the data off. Do you do that? I don't do that. What does that cost? It costs around $2,000 with no guarantee, and it takes a few weeks. And then my computer will work? No, that's just getting your data back. You'll still have to have me do all the work. So these are the risks that you choose to take if your data is important to you. And everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them. It hasn't happened yet. I don't know what to say. I have people crying on the phone. I have pictures of a vacation. We just got back from Alaska. I don't think I'll ever be in Alaska ever again. What am I supposed to say to that? Oh, in that case, I'll get your data back. I mean, it doesn't change. It's just unfortunate. So if the data is important to you, make copies of it. Yes?
Flash drives.
I'm sorry?
Put it to your mouth.
Flash drives?
Flash drives, there you go.
How long do they last? How long does the data stay on it? Or does it degrade over time?
On a flash drive, I've never seen one yet where data has faded. I've got a flash drive from the early 2000s. I think it's a 64 megabyte flash drive made by iOmega. A company doesn't even, well, they might still exist, I'm not sure, but It still works fine today. Generally, the reason a flash drive will fail will be it'll get a shock, or it'll suffer some kind of a electrical damage or component failure. If the flash drive works, I think the data will be on it for the rest of our lifetimes anyway. Nothing lasts forever, but it is more reliable than what we were using, like hard drives, which are magnetic based, and magnetic strength over time fades. When we're using solid state, when we're using chips, and it's not powered by a battery, such as a flash drive, it'll last many, many, many years. I would say a minimum of 20 years. I'm not sure how far beyond that. But I don't think it's anything you need to concern yourself with. But again, you shouldn't be putting one copy of anything important on a flash drive. You should have another copy of it on another flash drive or somewhere else. I've seen people say, I've backed up my data to this drive. Great, so now you've got a copy of the data on your hard drive, on your computer, and on the external. They go, no, I took the data off of the drive here and I put it on the drive here. Well, you don't understand, that's not a backup. A backup is a copy. So it doesn't matter what you put the copy on. If you put it on a flash drive, you put it on a hard drive, you put it on the internet, it's the idea that you have a copy. Then you don't care how long a flash drive lasts. Who cares? Because when it dies, you just grab another flash drive and make another copy. Who cares? People say, which hard drive is most reliable? If you make your backups, who cares? The example I like to give is cars. Who makes the safest car? Well, Volvo claims to make the safest car. Mercedes claims to make the safest car. So that means I don't have to learn how to drive if I buy a Volvo or a Mercedes. I can just do whatever the heck I want? No, of course not. You still have to be a responsible driver. And, you know, it's all well and good to have a safe car, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't exempt you from your responsibilities behind the wheel. And as such is the case when it comes to backing up data. There is no perfect backup solution. But if you have copies of important data on at least 2 places, and preferably, if it's really important, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, then it's a minor inconvenience when you get a virus or a hard drive failure or a fire or a flood. Any of those things that happen, it's one less thing you've got to worry about. You say, okay, well, this sucks, but at least I can get the important things back. This is no different than what people have photographs in a shoebox and the house catches fire, flood, and thefts. It's all the same story, only now instead of a big shoebox, it can fit a flash drive this big. Yes?
Carey, I was under the impression that Carbonite would do a complete backup, like a mirror image of your drive.
I don't know if they've offered that, but here's the problem. A complete image of a hard drive is going to be pretty sizable. And it would take a long time to send that image up into the cloud, which is where Carbonite stores the backups. I don't even know how you would recover that without first putting an operating system in and then installing Carbonite so that you could restore your image. And how do you restore an image on top of a working operating system? I mean, maybe they can do it, but it's like changing a tire on a car that's in motion. Generally, you have to stop the car before, right? So it would take a lot of space, a lot of hard drive space. If that's offered and you're willing to wait for that to upload, certainly can't hurt to have it. I don't know if they offer that or not. And then the restore would also be equally slow. But I'll take slow over not at all, any day. Yes?
What is your opinion of Norton's? We have Norton's Antivirus, and invariably when I'm on the internet, it'll say your backup is now completed.
So Norton is a product name made by Symantec, and it encompasses a number of different products. You mentioned the backup, you mentioned the antivirus. These are 2 separate things. They sort of converge them or they offer them as a package. Same with firewalls and other products that Norton or Symantec makes. The 800-pound gorillas in the antivirus are McAfee and Symantec. And I don't like those big corporations. They're slow, they're not innovative, they're expensive, and you're nothing to them. Their focus is on large corporations with thousands of employees. In that environment, those products are better suited. What they have is a big marketing budget. That's why that name comes to the top of your head. You see Norton. They spend a lot of money getting their product pre-installed on Dells and HP, so when you bring it home, it's already there. And when it comes up for renewal, rather than the consumer doing some research to find a better, more suitable product for their needs, they just think it's easier to pay the bill. And these companies just get bigger and fatter and bigger and fatter and slower. I am not a fan of Norton or McAfee. They're the old men of antivirus. I want the young, hip, cool kids for my antivirus. And the one I like is called MCSoft. It was mentioned earlier today. That's EMSISOFT. I don't like any internet security products at all. Anything that says internet security, I have no interest in it. What I want is antivirus. And I also want anti-malware. There's over 100,000 new pieces of malware released to the internet each and every day. Each and every day. And none of these antivirus programs can protect you 100%, any more than that Volvo can say that you'll never be killed in a Volvo. So you don't get to just do whatever you want because you have antivirus. There's a lot of antiviruses out there, a lot of them.
If I could make a comment about Symantec or Norton.
Sure.
I had in my old, I think actually it might have been a PC, but because it was many years ago, it would not download the new version. And so I called them, got somebody in Asia, and they said, well, if you'll let me take over your computer, I'll get it to download. They knew more than I did. They took it over, they basically wiped my drive. It was just a white screen. There was nothing left. And when I said, you bombed my computer, basically, he went, hey, no responsibility, bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of that.
Well, that's true.
It was an older computer, and I opted to go to Mac at that point and just buy a new computer, but I'll never buy another Symantec product ever again.
The fact of the matter is, when you call a complete stranger and you give them permission to get into your computer, you're the one who screwed up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. If your computer is that important to you, that you entrusted it to somebody you don't know, I think that's an unwise thing to do. And I don't care if they say they're from Symantec. I don't care where they say they're from. It's frustrating to me. I've told customers, I'm going to save you some money. You go to Fry's and you buy this part. And when you get it, you hook it up, your problems will be over, and you can take care of it, you don't have to pay me any money. And sometimes I get a phone call that says, you know, I went to Fry's, I got the thing you told me to buy, it's not working. And I start talking to him, well, did you do this and did you do this? Yeah. Well, I don't have that. Well, what do you mean you don't have that? You bought what I told you to buy. No, I went there and the guy that worked at Fry's said this other one was better. I said, you know what, you call him. I get so offended by that. Do you know what that guy does for a living? He works at Fry's. Nothing wrong with that. But does he have 27 years in the business? You took a stranger's opinion over mine, and then you want me to then, after I've already helped you, start again when you didn't listen to me the first time? So I get a little, I take it personally. Maybe I shouldn't. But I like to help people, and it's so frustrating when I say, I could do this for you, but it's going to cost you this much money, or you can do this yourself and save money, and then they don't do what I suggested, and then they call me asking me to now fix a problem that's worse. When you have problems like that, your best bet, it's fine to call the company for support. That's nothing wrong with that. But the minute they want remote access, it's a gamble. And the other thing is, how do you know you're actually talking to the real company? If I Google Dell support, numbers are going to come up that appear to be Dell support, that are actually not Dell support. They will answer the phone, thank you for calling Dell support, but they're not Dell. So how do you know you're talking to the real Dell? The only way you could really know is by looking at the paperwork that came with the computer, or going to Dell.com and clicking on support. But if you just do a search for it, who knows what's going to come up that day? And that's how a lot of problems start. People believe they're talking to the real company. I don't know that you were really talking to Symantec. You might be blaming them for something they didn't do.
No, it did come off the box information, but
Okay,
this
all right.
was a contact, one of their generic call centers.
Well, and what he said is true. They are not responsible for any loss of data, or if they make a bad problem worse. They're not responsible for it. There's no way for them to fix it. They can't. At that point, when your computer's screwed up, at that point you have to be in front of it to fix it. You can't do that remotely. I can't reinstall an operating system remotely. I can't turn a screwdriver remotely. So, but that's not limited to just Symantec. That's pretty much every tech company in America at this point, unfortunately. There's a handful that have local American-based support. Viper Antivirus, V-I-P-R-E. If you ever get a virus, Viper won't remove it. You call Viper support, which is based in Florida. I believe it's in Florida. And they will remove the virus remotely, free of charge, and if they can't get it off, they will pay for you, they'll pay the shipping cost for you to mail the computer to them. They will fix it and mail it back to you, and there'll be no cost to you. Is Viper a better antivirus than their competitors? I don't know, but none of the competitors offer that service, so who cares? Right? We're shifting the way we're thinking about this. If that is something that appeals to you, you might want to consider Viper. You definitely don't want two antiviruses on your system, though. Pick one. Whatever you decide to go with. And if it's Norton and you're happy with Norton, then keep Norton. Don't remove it because of what you heard here today, because when you remove it, you might have a problem. And you're going to go, I should have listened to that guy. Right? Because I'm going to say, not my responsibility. So again, I'm a big fan of don't break it, don't fix it if it ain't broke. And there's no one solution that's right for everybody. Different types of support, different types of protection, different costs. But you do need to have something for antivirus. So I recommend MCSoft for antivirus and anti-malware. Or I recommend using the Windows Defender program, which comes with Windows, for antivirus, and Malwarebytes for anti-malware. Those two will work together. And I recommend, if you use MCSoft, you don't have to use anything else. And if you use Malwarebytes, you use Windows Defender with that. Windows Defender is free with Windows. But when we look at choices for antivirus, look at everything that comes up. Bitdefender, Kaspersky, ESET, Nod32, Viper, Total AV, MCSoft. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. There's a lot of software vendors that make antivirus. And every one of them will tell you they're the best. This is no different than anything else in life. When you walk down the aisle of the shopping, at the grocery store, and you see all these different kinds of detergent, everyone says they're going to make your clothes the cleanest. When you go to when you watch TV and you see the ads for cars, everyone is the best car. So it's a very individual decision that you make that's right for you. There's nothing that I can tell. I can't say what's right for you if I don't know you. So just be aware of that. And the reason you make your choice doesn't matter why you don't have to justify why you like it. Maybe you just like the colors, they're prettier. That's as good a reason as any to stick with one product over another. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of antivirus to choose from. And any antivirus is better than no antivirus at all. So the problems that I generally see, once again, are with internet security products, and that's where it's an antivirus and a firewall and all this stuff built into one. That's generally where I see problems, that kind of software. That's where you're most likely to accidentally lock yourself out. We have other questions? Quiet room today?
Yes. I have a question, probably not for you, but for anybody here. I am using a Unix-based operating system called Fedora, and I'm having problems getting my Wi-Fi to work correctly. So I'm looking for some support there. Thank you.
Is there anybody at the park that, maybe at the computer center, that knows Linux? Does anybody know? You might want to head over to the computer center and ask. The problems you're having with the Wi-Fi, is it just that you're not seeing Wi-Fi to connect to, you can't connect to it, or you just, the Wi-Fi doesn't even see?
I connect, it says it's connected. I try to go to a URL, and it just sits there and spins saying unable to download.
I think that's the park's Wi-Fi. Have you tried using a hotspot?
I haven't done that.
So you don't know if the problem's with the computer or with the source of the
I use
Wi-Fi?
Fox, and what I'm doing right now is I'm using an Ethernet cable, which works great.
So you have your own Wi-Fi?
I have.
You have a Wi-Fi router?
Yes, I do.
And you're connecting to the router and nothing's happening?
That's correct.
I see. Yeah, okay. Well, I was hoping it'd be easier than that. That's what I get for talking to a Linux user. Linux users are usually a bit more computer savvy than your average computer user. So, what's that?
I was.
You were. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know anything about Linux. But Linux is a free operating system, and being in business, a lot of people that run it are people that do things themselves. So there's not a lot of money to be made, other than a lot of the internet runs Linux, and you certainly can get a job being a Linux administrator, but there aren't many of them compared to the Windows platform. So my lack of knowledge in things like Linux and Apple are just a business decision based on sheer numbers. Just like when people write viruses. It's not that Linux or Apple products are more immune to viruses, it's that there's fewer possible infections versus the PC world. And just like any other business, you want to have the biggest market possible. If I'm going to spend this time writing this virus, I want the greatest returns possible. And for that reason, I'm going to write it for Windows. And if everybody switched to Mac, then the virus writers would be writing towards Mac, and my business would be focused on fixing Macs. So it's just the reality of it. And so there are generally Linux forums you can go on. You need an internet connection to do it, I understand, where somebody might be able to help you, and that would be where I would lean personally. How are we doing on time?
We're doing good.
How much do I have left?
About 15 minutes.
Oh, good, okay. There's so much for me to talk about, and I'm kind of stuck up here because we've talked about backups, we've talked a little bit about Wi-Fi, VPNs, and I'm trying to consider which way I want to shift. I'm a little shy about talking about Bitcoin. Someone asked me about Bitcoin, and I was at a computer club, and this has never happened to me. I'll share this story with you. I'm explaining it's a virtual currency, blah, 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 and maybe I was going on too long about it. This lady raises her hand, and I said, "Do you have a question?" And she goes, "Yes, can you talk about something else?" I said, "What would you like me to talk about?" "I have no problem, talk about whatever you want to talk about." "Something else." It's not you. I have heard so much about Bitcoin in the news and on the newspaper. I'm sick of hearing about it. Talk about something else, please. How many of you feel that way? So should I talk about Bitcoin? There are these virtual currencies. And much like a VPN, they provide anonymity. You can make purchases that are untraceable, untaxable, because they didn't know you spent it. They have no way to prove it. And it is an interesting investment opportunity with huge risk because nobody controls it. It's based on supply and demand. And the value of Bitcoin at one point was like $7, and about a year and a half later it was at $22,000. Now I think it's around $11,000. And you can buy fractions of a Bitcoin. You don't have to invest in an entire Bitcoin. You can invest as much as you want to, buy $200 worth of Bitcoin and sit on it. Nothing's to prevent Bitcoin from having zero value. The only reason it has any value is people have agreed it has value. And it can be easily manipulated, in as much as people can gather a large group of people to all buy Bitcoin and then raise the price up. And then other people see that and they go, ooh, I better start buying, the price is going up, and then they dump it, and then it just drops right back down. That's illegal, but there's no way to enforce that. It's a virtual currency, you don't know who the players are. But it's a level playing field in the sense that no bank controls it. No person decides what its value is. It's all decided by the marketplace. And as long as the market agrees it has value, it'll have value. And I predict that maybe not this next generation, but the one after them, I think they're going to be using some kind of a cryptocurrency. I don't know what it'll be, but I do believe it's the future. And I do believe that investing in the right one will pay off. I don't know which one is the right one, and I don't know when it'll pay off. But I know that much. You know, and we can all play the what if game. Man, if I had bought that Bitcoin and it was $7 a Bitcoin, if I bought $1,000 worth of that, and then I sold it when it was $22,000, wouldn't that be great? But that's, you know, if I'd have bought that Google stock. I suppose the difference is stocks are controlled by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Cryptocurrencies are not, you can't control them. It's a wild west in the internet. And there's about 1,500 different cryptocurrencies. And there's no central processing point. That's what Bitcoin mining is, or cryptocurrency mining. Every transaction that's made is a mathematical algorithm that has to be resolved. And it's spread across computers that are running the software around the world. It's completely decentralized. So there's a lot about crypto. It seems to be the theme today. When we talk about VPN, we're talking about cryptography. We're talking about encrypting your data to secure it. We talk about cryptocurrencies. We're talking about encrypting, and by encrypting it, we can't trace it. We have no idea what the amount is, or who the seller is, or who the buyer is, or even that the transaction took place. There is a ledger that shares the transaction and the amount, so we can know how much money is being moved, but we don't know, theoretically, we don't know where it's moved from and where it's moved to, or if that was a legitimate transaction or a theft. We don't know. There's also something called ransomware. Ransomware is a type of virus that will encrypt all the pictures and documents on your computer, and then usually give you a big screen on your background, your wallpaper. And it'll say, you've been infected with ransomware, all of your data has been encrypted, you must pay this much, usually of Bitcoin, because it's not traceable, within this period of time, usually 72 hours, or we'll destroy the key. In 72 hours, we throw away the key. Without the key, your own data will be right there in front of you, and you will not be able to access it because it will be encrypted, and there will be no way for you to crack that. Maybe in 20 years, when computers are more powerful, maybe if you hold on to the encrypted data, at some point you'll be able to unencrypt it. But, you see, we'll go full circle. If you had a backup, who cares? You would just remove the virus, erase the encrypted data, and restore from your backup. You're back up and running without any losses if you have a current backup. Had a customer, pretty smart guy, called me my busiest time of year is December. Every year, it's always very, very busy. And calls me a couple weeks before Christmas and he goes, I got this message on my screen, my data's been encrypted, what do I do? And I said, you restore from, you remove the virus, you restore from the backup. Well, here's the thing, Carey, I have a backup. I last used it in April. Well, you can recover everything since April. Well, it's December now. I mean, that's a lot I'm going to lose. There's a book I started. I said, pay the ransom. Well, what if they don't give me the key? Too bad. But they probably will. Well, I don't have $500. I said, for me to take your computer, completely rewipe it, reinstall your software, reinstall the drivers, it's a couple $100. And you're not going to get your data back. If I was you, I'd pay the ransom. It is at such a point that police departments around the United States pay the ransoms when their computers get infected with ransomware. Yes. Yes.
You fix computers, do you fix printers?
No, printers are so inexpensive now, it's just cheaper to buy a new one.
Okay, a little advice. The Best Buy guy told me that for snowbirds, like most of us, if you keep a printer here, the ink cartridge is going to dry out.
Yes.
So you have to buy new ink cartridges every time you come down.
If you kept a car here, you'd have to buy a new battery for it when you came back, yeah.
And sometimes when you buy a new ink cartridge, it still won't work. So you may have to buy a new printer every time or every third time to come down. But the solution, he said, is to get a laser
He is correct.
because
It doesn't use ink.
the toner won't dry out.
Toner is already dry, yeah.
It'll cost you more to begin with, probably, and the cartridges will cost a lot more.
No,
But
no. A toner cartridge,
will print a lot more pages, so
Yes.
the cost per page is going to be actually less.
yes,
And it's going to be reliable.
yes. All of that is true. Everybody hear that? But a color laser printer is quite expensive. If you're okay with black and white printing, which I am, because I'm a business, I need to print invoices. I've had laser printers, 3 laser printers, since 1990 something. That's, how many years does that mean each laser printer has lasted? I'm only on number 3 now. So, and what's great is my new laser printer was $50, refurbished Samsung, and it's got a scanner on top of it that's wireless. I never thought I'd see a wireless scanner. People used to ask me, how can I share my scanner with other computers? I go, why would you want to? You still have to walk over to the scanner to use it, so why not just use the computer that's right there? But they did it. They make the printers wireless, and you just install the printer software, and you can scan with the printer, and you can print with it. And I replace the toner cartridge about every 3 years, and it runs about $80, but ink nowadays runs $60 anyway. But if you do run a color laser printer, then you have to replace 4 toner cartridges. You've got, just like with ink, you've got a black, you've got a cyan, magenta. We're getting some feedback. And anyway, and it'll print beautiful color photos, but it's just more maintenance and more cost to replace those cartridges. But absolutely, and I've said that for years here, if you guys want a printer that you want to leave here, a laser printer is the way to go. And if you're okay with black and white, the cost difference between that and an inkjet is, they're very comparable. Yes?
We used to bring that cartridge home with us, and then it wouldn't dry out.
You'd bring the cartridge home with you and it wouldn't dry out. Well, you can certainly try that, but again, if the printer is sitting here and it's not moving, the oils, because we're so dusty here, the dust gets into the grease, and then over time it hardens and becomes like glue, and then you may have a perfectly fine cartridge, but the printer won't work because it's just been sitting. Things that sit for a long period of time or aren't used generally don't work as well as something that's used on a regular basis. I even recommend, if somebody has a desktop computer, not a laptop, but a desktop, and you want it to be as reliable as possible, never turn it off. Restart it, that's fine. Restart it once a week, but never turn it off. If you never turn it off, in my experience, this is just anecdotal, but in my experience, you'll have fewer problems. Most of the time when I get a call with a computer problem, it starts with, I turned my computer on today and this happened. Well, if you don't turn it off, that's less likely. But laptops, they generate a lot of heat, and you don't want to leave a laptop on 24/7 because it will probably overheat. It's just not designed for that kind of use. So that's always a difficult question. People say, is it better to turn the computer off or to leave it on? And in my experience, I leave them on. My computer at home has been on for 14 years. I mean, I have to turn it off to upgrade it. I have to turn it off to make some changes. But it's never, I don't think it's gone 24 hours of being off in years.
that apply to printers too?
Does that apply to printers? Printers these days generally have a standby mode, so you never need to turn a printer off. So it won't help you on an inkjet though, because the inkjet will still dry up because it's not being used. You know, if they ever made an inkjet printer that you could leave on and plugged in with power, and every once in a while it would cycle through the ink, you know, if you had paper in it, then when you got back here, and assuming you're paying an electric bill for a place you're not staying at, it would work. But then you'd probably be spending more money in ink and paper that it would be wasting while you're gone to keep it lubricated and moving. You know what I'm saying? But a laser printer will have a standby mode, which will be a low power standby. It can stay in that mode forever, no problems. The only issue is if you have a big electrical storm or something where there's a power spike, and then you really want to unplug it from the wall to prevent any electrical damage. We don't see that too often here, but if you, back home, if you live somewhere where there's a lot of storms, even if you have a surge protector, your safest, the only way you can guarantee you're not going to get damaged is to unplug it until the storm's over. Yes?
You mentioned that you bought a refurbished printer
Yes.
for about $50. Where would one get one for here?
My favorite thing is Amazon. I buy a lot of things off Amazon. I was going to show you the stories on the news of the police departments that paid the ransomware, just to get back to that for a minute. There's a chief of police in one town, the evidence computer got infected with ransomware. They don't have backups. And they concluded they had to pay the hijackers, so they paid him, and then the sheriff thought he'd be clever, and after he got the key and unencrypted his data, he canceled the payment. But then the hijackers re-encrypted his data and tripled his price. And he was not happy. And we're talking about a sheriff, a man who enforces the law. His pride is on the line. He had to pay that money and walk away from it. So if the police can't do anything, and this is not one police department, this has happened, I believe, to 5 police departments so far in the United States, because they're not following proper backup procedures. I don't know. I don't know if they are now or not, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not. It didn't come out of his pocketbook. Okay, so where was I? What was the last question? Oh, printers. Where do you get a printer for? So if I go to Amazon and I just type in laser printer into Amazon, and we'll just do a search. I have no idea what's going to pop up. Let's see what's available. Let's say I need a printer, and I'm going to go up here and sort by lowest price. So I'll see the cheap ones first. These are too big. I don't want anything that big. So let's scroll down. This one says it's $60. This one says it's $51. This one says it's $65. That one's $5.50 shipping. If I isolate this to just Amazon Prime or free shipping, we can check the free shipping box. And we can scroll through all of these different laser printers. This one's pretty small, it's $100. It's a Brother makes pretty good. I like Samsung personally, so I would just further whittle down the results to Samsung. And here we're getting toner. And you see $80, $70. They're not much more money. And they're gonna come with a sample toner cartridge, which is not a completely full toner cartridge, but no differently than the inkjet printers. Generally don't give you the full-size ink cartridges when you buy the printer. They're not very expensive. I like the idea that I can push a few buttons and click my mouse, and I don't have to leave the house. The printer, whatever it is I order, comes right to my door. That is worth so much to me, to not have to get out in this traffic, to not have to find somebody to help me at Best Buy or Fry's Electronics, to find out the thing I went in there for, they're out of stock on, or they got to check the back room, and then I got to wait in a line to pay for it. It's going to sound bad. If I don't have to deal with people, it makes my life easier. My doorbell, literally one morning, I ordered something from Amazon. It was before 10 a.m. And by 6 p.m. there was a ring on my doorbell, and there it was. I didn't have to worry about a car accident, a door ding in the parking lot.
A great return policy also.
Yeah, the return policy is very good at Amazon, and as is Newegg is another place I shop for electronics at Newegg, and I've done videos for Newegg, so I'm a little biased. But I buy, the benefit of buying from Newegg is they won't charge me sales tax in Arizona, and Amazon does. But even the sales tax in Amazon is still less than the sales tax you pay locally. It's a bit less. Yes?
Corey, on that ransomware situation, there's no way to really remove that without wiping your hard drive?
It's encrypted. You can remove the virus that caused the encryption, but everything that's been encrypted stays encrypted unless you decrypt it with the key.
But what I meant was, once you're infected, then you're at the mercy of that person continuously?
No. If you have a backup, you could wipe all of the affected data and remove the virus and restore the affected data.
How to prevent it?
If you don't have a backup, then yes, you're at the mercy of. And if you don't know how to remove the virus, then the end answer for anybody to fix a computer problem is wipe it and reinstall it. That's the generic answer. If you're going to do it yourself. You could pay a professional, but when you end up paying the professional, you might as well just pay the ransomware.
How to prevent it?
How do you prevent ransomware? How do you prevent a car accident? I mean, you have to make wise decisions behind your keyboard and your mouse on the things that you're clicking on. Email attachments or links, if you're not expecting them, don't expect or rely on your antivirus to catch you every time. It'll probably catch you 8 out of 10 times, but 2 out of 10 is going to slip right on through. Depends on a lot of variables. If you make backups of your important data, who cares how to prevent it? Who cares? You got backups. It's an inconvenience. You remove the virus, you delete the encrypted or affected files, and you restore the affected files from your backup. It's not a big deal.
Won't they just reinfect?
Not if the virus is removed. A virus is just a piece of software. Once you take that piece of software off the computer, sometimes it's hidden, so you do need some training sometimes. Sometimes your antivirus will do it for you automatically, or another antivirus product you can use temporarily to get the virus off. Once the virus is off, then it's safe for you to remove that encrypted data and restore it. And then it's just uninstalling a piece of software. A virus is just a piece of software. A virus never breaks a computer. Never. Nobody will ever tell you you have to buy a new computer because you have a virus. It's just a piece of software. If you put bad gas in your car, you don't have to replace the car. You have to drain the tank. It's a pain in the butt. You may not want to do it yourself. You might want to pay somebody to do it. But for somebody to go, oh, you got to buy a new car now, that's not true. It has no impact on the physical hardware of the computer. It's only affecting, it's software affecting software. Software is programs, hardware is the computer, the components you can hold in your hands. That's hardware. Software is ones and zeros. You can't hold that in your hands. You can put it on a flash drive and hold the flash drive in your hands, but the data itself doesn't exist in atoms in physical form. So if you're curious, the difference between hardware and software. I see a lot of this misuse of the terminology kind of bothers me. Uploading and downloading. Sending and receiving. Downloading is receiving, uploading is sending. Is there a question here? Yes. We'll get you a mic.
Last night I was on my phone and something came up, it said there was a virus, and it was from Google, and it said to go to the Play Store and download a virus protector. And it kept doing it, and then I went to my virus protector and it said I don't have any virus. And then I shut the phone off several times and it was still there, and then eventually it went away.
That's an advertisement for antivirus. That's tricking you.
Oh, okay.
You're seeing an advertisement. And unfortunately, not from a legitimate source. So, generally speaking, first of all, if you get a phone call from anybody telling you your computer has a virus, they don't know who you are. They're just randomly calling numbers. They have no idea who you are. If you get a phone call from anybody about the IRS, the electric company, and you're not expecting it, like you know you don't have any issues with the IRS, you know you've paid your electric bill, you are dealing with a scam artist. And it won't matter how good your computer security is. You can have the best home alarm in the world, and if somebody knocks on your door and says, "Hi, I'm from Cox Cable, and I'm here to replace your box," and you weren't planning it, and you let him in, what was the point of having the security system? You're not using it. You are the weak point of security. And in general, human beings are the weak point of all security issues. And to look for a piece of software to solve this for you is like taking a pill to lose weight. It sounds great, but it doesn't work that way. It never has. You have to accept responsibility for the decisions you make with your computer. Whether you know, that gentleman that I mentioned got infected with the ransomware. The way that happened is it was a very busy time of year. He's normally very cautious. He's never ever done this before. He got an email from somebody he knows with an attachment he wasn't expecting. He was curious, clicked it, and boom, he was infected. Normally, he would exercise better judgment, but he was in a hurry. He was distracted, and it never was going to happen to him. Never happened before, hasn't happened since. And I hope he's making backups now. There's a weird Murphy's Law about backups. Those who have them generally don't need them. But I think there may be another part to that, and that is those who have them, I don't hear from. Usually. I make backups for a client of mine. Let me tell you about my, am I good? How am I? I got to wrap it up? Yeah. Okay. Just a really quick story. I have a customer. I maintain all the office computers remotely from my house now. I can do all the maintenance after hours. They leave the computers on 24/7. I can do the backups remotely, everything remotely. A couple of years has gone by. This company has had no data loss. I mean, when a company suffers data loss, that means employees have to redo work, or employees are on the clock and can't work until things are put back up. So the company's losing more than just the data. They're losing money for paid employees who can't work until that problem is resolved. That puts a lot of stress on guys like me. Well, he hasn't had any problems. He says, "Why do we pay you?" In my world, I get one of two questions, or statements. We're always having problems. Why are we paying you? We're never having any problems. Why are we paying you? Backups are insurance. That's all it is. And I tell my client, do you change the oil in your car? Of course. But your car was running fine, right? Nothing wrong with it. Right. But you took it into the shop anyway. And when you got it back, it didn't look or act or operate any differently. But you paid money for that. Yes. What happens if you stop changing the oil? Well, the car will break. Not necessarily. That car might run for years. You won't know. Because his question was, well, what if we didn't pay you anymore? You might be fine. What if, I haven't used the insurance on my car. I haven't been in any accidents in 20 years. Why am I paying for something I never use? Well, if you never get into any accidents and you're never pulled over, guess you can get away with it. Are you a gambler? Do you want to gamble with your business? And so that's, when it comes to personal data, that's the question you ask yourself. When it comes to how often should I back up, all you have to do is ask yourself, if I went to turn my computer on today and it wouldn't turn on, and I had to go to my backup, will I be okay? And if the answer is no, it's time for you to update your backup. And it's different for everybody in this room. And again, any backup is better than no backup. So I guess that's what I'm going to leave you with today. Again, my name is Carey Holzman. Thank you for coming to see me. I have my business cards up here for those of you who want my number. And enjoy the remainder of your stay and have a safe trip home.